This video will showcase the sharpness of the Canon 200mm f2 LIS USM on a 61 megapixel camera, and I will compare it to the Sony 70-200 f2.8 GM OSS. It is very important to use a shutter of probably at least 1/250th of a second when taking high megapixel photos like these in order to avoid camera shake motion blur. However, as a result of this, the images were underexposed by roughly 1 stop. The images have been taken during wintertime on an overcast day. I've lightly edited these photos in Lightroom by increasing the exposure, contrast and vibrance slightly. The iris of the eyes have had their shadows lifted. Please take the exposure and shadow adjustments into account when noticing grain in the picture. The images have been cropped to fit a 16:9 aspect ratio monitor. The pictures have been scaled to fit a 4K monitor, roughly 2:1. There is no degradation in sharpness in this process. 1:1 and 1:3 crops will be shown later in this video. There will be a degradation in sharpness, however, after saving from RAW to JPEG, and then again when exporting the final video to H.264. And lastly, YouTube will recompress the video after the upload. For this reason, you can download the images in the description below this video in both RAW and JPEG. I will make one more sharpness test during the summer of 2021 with the Canon 200mm f2 LIS USM in bright sunny conditions and using a tripod. The first thing I notice at the original size is that I can see every single strand of hair without any trouble. I don't see any single soft line on any of the contrasting edges on this picture. Zooming into 1:1, I still see incredible levels of details for this focal length. Each strand of hair is visible and every single detail on the face is visible without being noticeably blurred at all. However, I do start to see some slight softness. Pay attention to the sky inside of the iris. The line between the bright white sky and the brown iris is ever so slightly soft. Zooming into 1:3, this becomes increasingly noticeable, but definitely within acceptable levels. This level of softness is only a concern if you print exceedingly large prints and want those prints to be razor sharp. Let's take a look at the 70-200 f2.8 GM OSS performance, so we can see how an older prime lens design from 2008 stacks up to a relatively modern zoom lens. When looking at the sharpness from 2:1, the two lenses seem identical. Zooming into 1:1, they continue to look identical. They produce different colors, the Sony colors being a bit warmer and the Canon colors being a bit cooler. Going all the way into 1:3 zoom, and the lenses still look identical to my eyes when it comes to sharpness. This will, however, change when we take a look at the next picture I've taken. In this picture, the front-facing part of the lens, the front cover of the book, and the front of the Nintendo Joy-Con leaflet is all in the same plane of focus. All the way zoomed out, these images look identical when it comes to sharpness. Zooming into 1:1 tells the same story. However, when zooming into 1:3, we can start to see that the Sony lens is slightly sharper, at least in this non-controlled environment. I could not see a difference in sharpness in the portrait. To conclude, I believe the Canon 200mm f2 LIS USM to be roughly as sharp as the 70-200mm f2.8 GM OSS. As a further comparison to sharpness, then I also believe that it is roughly as sharp as the Sony 85mm f1.4 GM lens at f2. This level of sharpness will fit perfectly to a Canon R5 with its 45 megapixel, or an A7R IV if you want to go off-brand like me and use an adapter. Before leaving, I can say that the Canon lens performs perfectly on the Sigma MC11 in any kind of non-sports environment. I haven't noticed anything weird. Real-time tracking and IAF works. It's fast and snappy.